Hey, Doug and Pat here with another episode of the Wealthy Gym Owners. And today we're going to talk about fall marketing. There's definitely a lot of things that we can cover here, but I think that we'll be able to help you create a pretty solid playbook. So let's get to it. So, Doug, I mean, really, I think January gets a lot of the hype in our industry, and deservedly so. I mean, that's certainly a time when people may embark on new behaviors or try to get things in line as far as health, fitness, wellness goes. But maybe the underappreciated opportunity for some real significant growth is the fall. So, I wanted to see if today we can help people put together a playbook for what they should do in the fall if they want to really see, a surge of leads and clients coming to their business. So I know you're going to be neck deep in all of this as we're entering that period. So figured I'd just get you to start unpacking a little bit of that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the fall is actually I mean, certainly the new year, like you said, deserves its own credit. But especially for our audience, predominantly being training gym owners, we tend to be, frankly, not want a ton of those new year rushes. And, they're often, I think, if I talk to most of our clients, the February, March timeframe is often actually stronger than January, unlike the health club world. And so the new year, it certainly deserves the credit. But I do think the fall is, specifically September, October, is a really strong period to maximize marketing. And I think that comes back to paying attention, whether you have kids or not. I think the school system is the most important thing to pay attention to because just like, I mean, I don't know where it is in every other state, but 70% of my tax dollars go to the school system. The school system is just part of the culture everywhere, whether you have kids in school or not. Like I think of my in-laws, they don't have kids in the school system anymore. But as soon as school goes back, it kind of is that fall reset period. Now, what's interesting is for some people, depending upon where you live, that's in mid-August. For others, it's after Labor Day. So I think making sure that, use that, it kind of is that summer reset where, obviously the traditional kind of school schedule starts off, but also if you look at that population that a lot of us serve, the 60 plus, 50 plus, even their travel schedules tend to wind down a little bit. Maybe they're helping out less with kind of the chaos of summer. So I think nailing the timing of it's pretty important. And really, in my opinion, that would come back to messaging, right? Switching your messaging from the summer terminology, like we always do well in the summer with a summer membership, as opposed to, when do you shift that language to talking about the fall season? And again, the fall season here in New England is a very different time period than where it might be in the Midwest. So I think getting your messaging right for the season and the timing of it, I think is certainly where I would start before you start throwing out mechanics and some of the actual offers.
Yeah, I think what you touched on about the school system still having a profound influence, even if you don't have school age children, is one that I get a lot of questions about. They're like, well, I work with the 50 and over crowd or the 60 and over crowd, and, so they don't have kids in school. I'm like, it still is embedded in the culture. It's just kind of the rhythm of life that people are used to. So I think that season change. And then the other thing, you touched on Labor Day is a break point for a lot of this, where a lot of people kind of close up their perception of summer at Labor Day. I mean, in an HOA, like our HOA pool closes at Labor Day. So just the way that I think our society, at least in you know, the the Midwest, the Northeast, wherever else, is like, there are things that happen, a shift that happens that kind of puts a bow on summer. And then people tend to, in fall, kind of fall back into a different type of rhythm. It has a different pace. So I think using that as kind of a milestone to shift your messaging, I think is critical.
Yeah. For sure. And the next thing I would look at is before, again, certainly can share plenty of tactics and more the mediums in which we might market on. But just to further, I think a big separator right now in this industry is just continuing to get better with your messaging. And so, you've talked about positioning, messaging, how you're putting yourself in the marketplace and making sure we understand kind of what for your avatar. So everybody, even though everybody's kind of follows that same schedule, when it does come time to shifting that, what is the actual pain point that your avatar is now facing at that time of year? Because that pain point is slightly different. Yes, broadly it's the same throughout the year, but there's certain things. For example, were they super chaotic schedule summertime and now it's all about building a new habit or restarting a new habit? Or is it more, are you more, body comp focused and hey, you didn't follow a good nutrition during the summer and now you're trying to kind of lock back in again? Is it obviously, a sports performance angle? Like, I think the messaging of what are they, there's certain things that I think a lot of markets or a lot of populations kind of put on the back burner during the summer. And then it kind of comes front of mind again in the fall. And so, whatever that is for your avatar, knowing that, calling that out in your messaging so that we could all offer a 14-day trial, a 21-day trial. That is the mechanic of it, but or the deliverable. But the messaging around that, I think, in order for it to sit, in order for it to be effective in the fall, really needs to call out the pain points of your specific avatar that they're currently thinking about. Because again, what they're thinking about in September, October is very different now than what they were thinking about in June and July.
So, along those lines, have you seen a lot of success with a themed offer kind of wrapped around that in the fall?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know challenges kind of get poo-pooed, but they worked, right? They had a deadline, they had a theme to them, and so maybe you're not using the word challenge, but it's a front-end offer, right? It's the basic. You're using a lot of the basics of marketing of scarcity, urgency, having that season. So for sure. Now, what you offer and how you sell that, I think, can be continually improved, whether that be, we find maybe on the front end, you need to have a shorter duration trial, something in that 21 to 42-day trial. But then if you're able to, when you get them in the door, you could offer that as an option B, but your option A is an incentive to go right on to membership. Because I think that's been an improvement the industry has made in recent years. At least I can speak with our clients, is we've really pushed getting them right onto membership with a small incentive. That way we're not running into what a lot of us ran into over the years, which is, stacking your gym with these trials and then, a large percentage of them not converting. But you can certainly use that as a reason to get started.
Yeah, so, having some sort of themed offer, I think historically we've seen this be a solid time to generate more referrals, reactivation, because, it's just swimming with the current with people's behavior, right? And I know that we talk a lot about reconnection versus reactivation. Well, I mean, staying in touch with people when they are just most likely to be restarting something, changing something, I think is a pretty sound way to pull people back in. And then again, kind of swimming with the current when people are most likely to do something is probably the easiest time to ask our clients to go out and be ambassadors for what we do as well.
Yeah. I know we have, a plethora of our clients, our coaching clients doing, some type of referral campaign or some type of referral challenge in September, whether that be, a simple bring a friend week or, some type of prize associated challenge where, they get entered to win a prize. I think, there's certainly, if you do those every single month, they kind of lose the effectiveness. But if you are rotating those in, that September is certainly, that fall period is certainly a good time to rotate them in. One of my favorite questions to send out to our list in the fall is just straight up asking them like an engagement style question, engagement style text, what's your fall fitness plan? And that question will, you'll certainly get a percentage that give you that snarky answer that we all kind of have to handle every once in a while. But that will also generate responses of, hey, here's what I got going on. Great to hear from you. Or, hey, thanks for reaching out. I was actually thinking about getting started again. So, kind of the whole reconnecting again, swimming with the current, getting somebody to respond to that kind of question in July when they're vacationing is tough to do, but when they're in a little bit more of a space and ready for change, I think does fairly well. And then same thing, I think when we get into some of our other strategies of non-paid advertising, and certainly paid advertising has its play here too, but when we look at things like, the business visits and kind of getting out in the community, I know in many, many markets, summertime is very hard to do that because one, like in my market, 80% of the people that are here in the summertime don't live here year round. They only are here in the summertime. So it's not super effective for us to be out in the community a ton during the summer, as opposed to September. Now, everybody that's around in September, I know are year round residents. And I know that we have a big fall kind of, the typical New England foliage has all the events that you can think of. And so those, a lot of it's driven by local events and local visitors, or sorry, local community members, not visitors. So choosing events to go to, choosing businesses to go to, I think your options become a little bit more easier and wider come the fall. And I know I touched on paid advertising. This is where I think some of it is like you can harvest a lot of what you may have planted, right? And so, as much as I don't want this to be the case, if you turn something on from paid advertising, it's not just going to give you a flood of clients. It's not just going to give you a flood of leads. But if you do that in September and you've been putting good stuff out there, you've been planting all summer long, the chances of that happening is higher versus if you didn't run anything. It's like the sports performance analogy, right? The kid that just comes in and trains for 8 weeks, not going to be effective as the kid that trains year round. So it's the same thing with the marketing. Hopefully we can kind of harvest a lot of what we may have been planting throughout the summer.
Does anything else change with paid ads as far as things like, I mean, have you ramped up ad spend during that season? I know you've gone more heavily into direct mail with some success. So does anything else change when you get to the fall?
I think if ideally you can get to a point where that stuff is running consistently and it's simply a messaging change. So, for example, like with our paid advertising, we don't change the budget per month. We just have a steady budget that we hit. Now, the words we use and the offers we use are changing. And again, I think that's part of my push with our clients of like, getting them to realize that it's not the paid advertising world is no longer I'm going to go spend 3 grand in 1 month and turn the faucet on and then shut it off for a couple months, right? It's just not as effective anymore that way. And so we don't necessarily change budget. I think it's more the emphasis of making sure our messaging is tweaked and dialed into what is really in the head of the client at that time of year.
So, I mean, you've unpacked a whole bunch here. Is there anything else you would want to add when it comes to being successful with fall marketing?
The only other strategy I might throw out there that we didn't hit on, we hit on the paid advertising, we hit on the reconnections and the referrals. The only other strategy that I think is one that probably does better in the fall, and again, I'm probably not going to have the bandwidth to do it every single month, is some type of either workshop or kind of client event where you're bringing people into the gym not to work out, right? So could be a workshop where, you have the local women's health doc that comes in and speaks. So it could be kind of fitness, health, wellness related, or it could just be like one of our best things we do is we go to the local brewery and we give everybody a drink ticket, and getting people there during the summertime is challenging because schedules are so chaotic. But Getting somebody there in the fall is a little bit more manageable. So I think, again, does that directly grow your business? I would argue yes, because I don't know about you, but most of our marketing is geared towards females and for our training gym model. However, most of our males, the spouses, come from referrals of the wife or the mom that signed up, and then they drag the spouse along to either the bring a friend week we talked about or to the social. And then inevitably, hopefully you or one of your team members can kind of convince him to give it a try, and now all of a sudden you got a referral out of it. So I think the in-person stuff, whether that be a workshop where you use that as a lead generator, use that as a referral strategy, or some type of social. Again, could you run those in the summertime? For sure. Are they going to be as effective? Probably not.
Well, I mean, there's the playbook. I mean, you've unpacked everything. Obviously, it's working great. You're on to gym number 4 right now. So this playbook is tested and proven. So if you're watching this or listening and you're trying to figure out how you want to run your fall to have the greatest possible success, well, this is a pretty good start. And if you need any help in refining it and kind of matching it to your model and your market, be sure to reach out. But that's another episode of the Wealthy Gym Owners with Doug and Pat signing off.